fever with an ear infection. Sometimes you can feel the post-auricular lymphadenopathy, and if you do, I always point that out to the parents because sure, if you don't, then they'll get home and find it and then call your office back. So save yourself an after-hours call by pointing out that post-auricular lymphadenopathy. This is a really bad ear. That's a really bad ear. This is a hole in an eardrum. Okay? All right. Remember, eardrums, doesn't matter your skin color, the eardrums are always the same. They look the same. Doesn't matter the skin color. What can cause an eardrum to be pink that's not an ear infection? What?
Roseola.
Roseola. You're almost there. Fever. Remember, fever can make the eardrum pink even though it's not a hot ear. It doesn't look like that one. It's just a generalized pink, okay? The kid's cheeks are flushed, the eardrums get red too, okay? All right. What's I going to talk about? Okay. Foreign bodies in the nose. I didn't make a slide for this, so let me just tell you because this is so cool, it's gross. So gross it's cool, one of the two. Foreign body in the nose. Kid comes into the ER, my ER down in Duncan, and they have shoved for the third time that day a bead up their nose. And I'm like, you didn't think to take the beads away from the kid the first time they shoved one up their nose, right? But this one they can't get out. Dad had managed to get the other ones out. This one he can't get out. It's up there too far. So what you do, you sit knee to knee with the kid and with the parent, and you have the parent, you hold the kid, the parent leans over and blows in the kid's mouth, just like that, and it shoots snot and the foreign body right out on the parent's cheek. Coolest thing ever. Isn't that cool? So you'll have to remember that, the blow in the kid's mouth technique, okay? I know, it's crazy. There's all kinds of stuff you can do to get foreign bodies out of the ear. You've got, you can flush it. You can use like a butterfly, like a pediatric butterfly, like you're starting an IV, and just gentle lavage. If you can get the butterfly tubing past the foreign body in the ear, you can often lavage it out like that. You can use a little bit of suction on the ear, gentle suction. Okay. All right, let's talk about breastfeeding. I know you guys self-studied the infant nutrition, and we'll get to that too in a minute. Those slides are coming up. But there's a thing called, oftentimes parents are really curious, how much is my baby getting when they breastfeed, okay? So there's an easy way to do that. You have them come in, and you weigh the baby in a clean diaper, naked in a clean diaper, okay? And then you have mom breastfeed, and then you weigh the baby again in the same diaper, okay? If they gain, and you got to have a really good scale for this, okay? 30 grams equals about an ounce of breast milk. Does that make sense? So you do these are breastfeeding weights. If they gained 75 grams, they had about 2.5 ounces of breast milk, okay? You don't change the diaper because if they urinate or defecate while they're eating, which is kind of gross, but babies do that, then you need to account for that weight because it was on the inside when you weighed the baby in the clean diaper, right? Makes sense? Okay. A lot of times we'll do this when we've got a 2-week-old that's breastfeeding that's just not quite back to birth weight. And a lot of times we do this just because the parents need reassurance. Parents can't do this at home on their own because they don't have a scale that's that accurate. Well, they might have one that's that accurate, but not one that the kid will actually lay on, right? Okay, so any questions about breastfeeding weights? Okay. A lot of parents, you're their source for what medications can they take, over-the-counter, supplements, all of this while they're breastfeeding. This is called the breastfeeding, the Mother's Milk Bible is what Dr. Moore called this, Mother's Milk Bible. And it's just a medications and breast milk. Don't rely on your memory. Seriously, just have a good source that you can go to and just flat double check every time. Okay? strabismus in a kid. Do you guys know anything about this? How do you guys know? Did you learn this in ENT? Well, oh, she did this morning? Well, that's awesome. What else did she talk about this morning? A lot? A lot ear infections? Okay, very good, very good. This is, the Hirschberg's test is the name of it, and I'm not a real big fan of dead guy names, but sometimes your preceptors will use words like these, so you should at least, have some, it should ring a bell, a distant bell somewhere, okay, when you hear a Hirschberg's test. And that's a pretty accurate test too, okay? All right, any questions about anything I've covered so far? All right. Let's look at the highlights from the chromosomal abnormalities self-study lecture. Basically, on these, I'm not going to pimp you to death. I'm not going to do, I just want you to understand the general principles, okay? So when it comes to trisomy 21, also known as, that's right, understand the clinical features of the facies. Does everybody know what I mean by the word facies? Certain conditions have similar facial appearances. Down's kids, they've got the low set ears, the slanted eyes, they've kind of got a little bit of protruding tongue, not a real prominent chin. That's kind of that's a normal facies for Downs. So understand the clinical features in the facies. Understand the unique presentation of the hands. What's that called? Simian crease. That's exactly right. So instead of here, like I've got, this one and this one, they've just got one crease that goes all the way across. And how to manage it. What do you need to check annually on your Downs patients?
Echoes.
That's right. That's exactly right. Which therapies should you? Echoes. Echoes. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean echo la la la. All right, which therapies to arrange for? They're probably going to need speech, OT, and PT, so. All right, so that's Downs. And then the way Patricia Ivins arranged her lecture was kind of interesting to me because she kind of grouped it together. So this is something, and you guys probably know all this because I swear to God, most of you are smarter than me, but normal females are XX. Normal males are XY. The egg always has an X. The sperm is either an X or a Y. Brilliant, right? So anyway, these are the things that sometimes you're just like, now, what the hell is that? Okay, all right. So sometimes it's good to just go back and review the basics because you get so far away from it that you just get confused. If you're like me, maybe you guys aren't, so sorry, but anyway, so XY linked means what? Females or males?
Males.
Oh my gosh, see, you got it already. Look at that. Klinefelter's has an extra X. Okay, understand the clinical features and presentation of Klinefelter's and also how to manage it. All right? XY linked, Turner's. So Turner's is males or females?
Males.
Right. Understand the associated anomalies that goes along with Turner's. Remember the wide set eyes, the shield-like chest, and that's right, the webbing, that's exactly right. All right, now, who knows what non-Mendelian means? Yes, Amanda?
Mendelian genetics is that basic principle of dominance and recessive genes that you can predict with statistics.
That's exactly right. So, non-Mendelian means what? It's random, just random, who knows why. So, Fragile X. So it's clinical features of males and females, because both males and females have the X, right? So understand just the clinical features, the clinical presentation of a Fragile X. When are you most likely to notice it? Puberty. When the boys are going through puberty, you'll notice the Fragile X. And then how to manage it. All right, so Mendelian chromosomal abnormalities, things that come along with your family history. Marfan syndrome. That's the big guy with the big hands. She had all those nice pictures of the hands and the lean spread and all of that. Understand Marfan's just how it presents, okay, and the management of that. These were the chromosome deletions and alterations that I think you should be familiar with. Cruda chat, cry of the cat, remember, because it causes the hypoplasia in the larynx, right? Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome. I had a kid come into the ER in Duncan, and Dad was so impressed that I knew what Beckwith-Wiedemann, I can't say it, but I knew it was. So, DeGeorge syndrome, I'm not going to pimp you on which particular allele of which gene on which leg, blah, 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 but just the general presentation. Basically, when you got an FLK in your clinic, everybody knows what an FLK is? That's something that I know they don't like it. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, it's not really copacetic, but I know reality, and reality is sometimes there are FLKs, right? And sometimes there are family trees that have no branches, also known as palmtriosis, right? It just happens, right? Does that make sense? Okay, I worked in an ER, and this nurse that I worked with, he was an older guy. He was probably a good 10 or 15 years older than me. And sometimes when people were just a little weird, you know, there would be just a Post-it note with a picture of a palm tree on it. That family tree had no branches. Okay. All right. Maybe that's... You gotta see the humor in things, or else you just cry all the time. Does everybody get that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I will deny it if you ever say it. Okay, understand Prager-Willi, that's the hyperphagia. I know you guys know what that is. And Angelman syndrome. That kid, that little blonde-headed kid on the Angelman syndrome, is that not the cutest kid ever? Yes?
That's what my nephew has.
Is that what that's what you were trying to think of the other day?
I don't know if it's...
I thought you were trying to tell me something and you couldn't remember.
I don't think so.
Maybe it was which one? Okay, great. So your nephew has Angelman's? All right. So, okay, remember yesterday when they were talking about the Epstein-Barr virus? Here's another tattoo I thought about getting. No, not this one. It's not as cool as the whole heart sounds thing. But anyway, so this just looks at like the IgG of the viral capsid antigen is elevated, and then this is, I just thought this would help for you guys to understand that, okay? All right. So there's that, because I have to look it up. I mean, I have to look it up every single time. And it's, I mean, some things you just have to do. All right. Okay, pediatric medication dosing. I know you went over this with Dr. Latassi, but you should be able to tell your parents 5 to 10 milligrams a kilogram every 6 to 8 for your ibuprofen. On how old are kids?
Greater than 6 months.
Greater than 6 months, that's exactly right. And why?
Because I can't have it often.
Well, okay.
It's not approved.
Liver, it's their liver development. Acetaminophen, 10. We just do 10 per kilo, Q4 to 6. Okay? What can you do when the fever's persistently up? Alternate how often? 3 to 4. 3 to 4. What do you do before you give the next dose? Check their fever again. Because, you know, really, your body runs a fever because it's trying to fight off infection. You take a kid that's sick and try to keep them completely fever-free, and sometimes they just stay sick longer. Does that make sense? Okay. And this is a dosing chart. You can get these for free from the manufacturers, and they usually are two-sided. Tylenol's on one side, Motrin's on the other. You just need to explain it to the parents, okay? And then you need to give them a dosing syringe. In our clinics, we've got 5 cc syringes and 10 cc syringes. I've written this out so many times, I just write it right on the dosing chart for the parent with the Sharpie. 1.25 cc's, which is the same as an ml, is a quarter teaspoon. Okay, does that make sense? And there's just the 2 teaspoons is 10 cc's. All right. What's better for a pediatric kid? What's better for a pediatric medication? More concentrated or less concentrated? More concentrated. But when you do that, it's up to you to educate your parents because it's very easy to overdose when it's very concentrated. So you need to really, and I always give my parents, if I see the slightest shred of doubt on their face, I get the Sharpie, I open the 5 cc syringe, I mark the 3.75 cc around with my Sharpie, and then I tell them that's how much you give them. Sometimes it helps to give them a little 30 cc medicine cup like they bring your pills to you in the hospital. They can dump out the amoxicillin because it gets down to the point where there's so much left in the bottle and the syringe only goes that far into the bottle. So they can dump it out, suck it up, and then put the rest back in and put it back in the fridge, okay? Anything you can do to help your parents get the medicine down the kid for the full regimen of the medication, okay? I was standing in line at Family Dollar one time and the lady in front of me was saying, oh my gosh, my kid had an ear infection, I can't believe it, blah, blah, blah. But what they give them, I've got to give her a teaspoon of something 4 times a day. And I was like, oh honey, no, I did not. But I wanted to say, darn it, why didn't somebody make it easier on this parent? Rather than 4 times a day, just do it twice a day, okay? And why would you, I mean, the smaller amount you got to force down a kid's throat, the better.
When I worked at the pharmacy, my pharmacist would say that the doctor must have not liked that family or something whenever they would come in with like epilepsy.
At least you didn't call them FLKs and palm trees, right?
Oh, man,
It's true, it's true. Or either that or they're old school and they just don't know how to convert it. So any questions about all of that? Great, I feel like you guys have a really good grasp on that. Tassie's done a great job with you guys. Okay, so the infant feeding, does anybody need a break yet? Want to just keep going through? Okay, you guys know me pretty well. Okay, so the infant feeding, breast is best, always. But please, dear heavens, when you've got that first-time mom in your office that is at the 1-month visit and crying because their baby doesn't seem to get enough to eat and they are just so frustrated, please don't make them feel guilty because they've got enough on their hands to feel guilty for. In fact, I tell them, here's the deal. Infant formula is fine. This child will give you so much to feel guilty for before they turn 18. Do not let this even be a thing. So use the formula. You know, forget what your mother-in-law says. Use the formula, okay? You know, and if they get to where, if they go back to work and they're having troubles, they can adjust to just nursing twice a day and letting the daycare center use formula. Your body will adjust to all that. You know, if they can do anything, that's better than nothing. But the most important thing you can do is give that mom, they have so much doubt, give that mom the confidence to be able to make that decision and do what's best for her baby within her capabilities. Does that make sense? Okay. Understand from that slide, I'm not going to ask you how much, there were some words in there I'll never be able to pronounce on that slide. But anyway, I'm not going to ask you all that, but understand the basic principles. Breast milk is about how many calories an ounce? Has anybody watched the videos yet? About 20 calories an ounce is breast milk. Formula is about what? 20 calories an ounce. Most of them, some of the fortified ones are 22 calories an ounce, okay? You've got a mom that wants to breastfeed, but their baby needs some fortification. They can pump, and there's a supplement that they can add to their breast milk to add a little bit of calories. What you don't want them to do is to think that, well, it's okay to put rice cereal in their formula. Sometimes it's necessary for, you know, spitters or whatever, but generally we don't want them to get into that habit. And when my kids were little, there was this thing about they would make bottles with really big holes in the nipples so you could put their baby food in there and just let them eat their baby food out of a bottle. I thought that was the most ridiculous thing ever, so yeah, don't let them, sometimes they'll try that stuff too, so try to not do that. Understand the different categories of infant formula and when they might need to be used. Basically, if they've got, this is their 4th kid and every other kid was on soy formula, I guarantee you there's no way you're going to be able to talk that mom out of using soy formula. But the 4th kid probably doesn't need it, and probably the other 2 before it didn't, but that first one might have. Does that make sense? When they get a formula that they like, they're going to use that for all their kids. Dr. Johnson talked yesterday about how to mix the formula. You always measure the water first, and then add the scoops because there's volume displacement from the volume of the powder. Okay, so when you fix that 4-ounce bottle, it actually looks like about almost 5 ounces of liquid, but that's normal. Explain that to the parents. Sometimes when they've got a gassy baby or a spitty baby, one of the things that I suggest, you can mix the formula up to 24 hours in advance. So use one of those protein shake thingies or whatever and mix the formula up and let it sit in the refrigerator. So all those air bubbles from mixing it up will rise to the top, and it can help with some of these kids that are a little gassy. And then they pour out what they need. And then they can heat it up in a pan or a coffee cup of hot water, not in the microwave, okay? A lot of times, well, the formula is only good for 24 hours in the fridge, but once that baby starts taking a bottle, because of the saliva and because their bacteria from their mouth will get in that bottle needs to be discarded after an hour. So, to be conservative, when you've got a little bitty baby, you don't try to fix more than just 2 ounces at a time. And like Dr. Johnson, I think she said this yesterday, or maybe I just wanted her to, if they're up to an 8-ounce bottle, they just need more food. There's no reason on God's green earth for a baby to need an 8-ounce bottle. Although some people are so proud, yeah, these 4 months old start taking an 8-ounce bottle. You know, so. Anyway, all right. Any questions? I don't think I had anything else. Oh, know how to help your families get the formula that they need, okay? Infant Crisis Center just gives people that come by and ask for it stuff that they need. WIC is a program that can do formula. Right now, I think it's Gerber's got the contract with the state WIC. The Indian Health Services might use other contracts. If they need a special formula like Alimentum or Elicare or something, you can often, you'll have to fill out paperwork and they can get that through the WIC office also. Encourage them to sign up because they will mail them coupons that are amazing. I can remember almost losing it when formula went from $5 a can to $7 a can between kids number 2 and number 3. And now it's up to 25. I mean, seriously. The best, if you do go into pediatrics, one of the best things you can do is spend some time in the peds section at Target or wherever and just see all the crap that they want to try to sell these parents that they think that they must have to raise their kids. And just then be able to talk informatively about it. Does that make sense? All right, any other questions about infant feeding? Yes?
Was it 1 scoop of formula to 2 ounces of water?
Yep, 1 level scoop of formula to 2 ounces of water. And by the way, after the kids are done with their formula, that scoop makes an awesome coffee scoop. Just saying. All right. Okay, Dr. Johnson and the well child exam, that was a lot, that was a dense lecture with a lot of information. And I gotta say, she did a lot better with you guys than she did last year. I think last year she ran out of time at like 9 months. I mean, it was just like, you know, so. But anyway, there's just so much, and you can tell that that woman just loves her job. So there's a lot of information. I'm not here to trip you up. I need you to know, what do I need you to know? The big things. Know the big things, right? So understand the newborn exam. And when Dr. Johnson said she doesn't understand why we need to do that, I took every other weekend for my first pediatrician that I worked with, and I did all the newborn exams. I made rounds every Saturday and Sunday in the newborn nursery at more medical centers. So there are places where you will be used to do those things. Not always, but most of the time you will. If you go into pediatrics, you'll have hospital privileges somewhere, and you'll need to know how to do a newborn exam. God, I remember the first one I did in Muskogee with Dr. Michael Stratton. I was scared spitless. And then he did the circumcision. Rough. On me, not even the baby. Forget the baby. That was rough on me. Okay. All right, so understand the newborn exam. And she did a really good job of explaining that to you. Understand the normal newborn presentation, okay? The APGAR and the Dubowitz. Be able to give an APGAR score. Be able to tell, be able to figure out what the Dubowitz. When would you use a Dubowitz scale? Or when you're not sure about dates, so when you're wanting to age the baby. Okay, does that make sense? On the Denver developmental, just know the milestones. If a parent comes in and brings a new patient to your practice that's 2 years old and not walking, should there be a red flag somewhere back here? Yeah, there should. But I'm not gonna nitpick you to death. Understand the highlights of anticipatory guidance. Do you talk at a 9-month well-child check about potty training? No. Why would you? Do you talk about it at 15 months? Sure, you do. You kind of introduce that concept, that kind of stuff. When to, generally, her guidelines are true. Generally, if they're eating well and doing well and don't have not a gaggy kid, you can start with solid 4 to 6 months. You set them up in their bumbo. Sometimes don't put their food in a bottle and give it to them. Give it to them off a spoon. If they spit it, a lot of times what I'll tell parents at the 4-month visit is, what's your child do while you eat dinner? Do you think, do they watch you? Do they watch that spoon go to your mouth with every bite? As soon as you start cooking, do they cry and want a bottle? That's because they're smelling the food and it triggers their hunger. Those are all signs that your baby's getting ready to start eating. So you start with something simple, a single grain cereal that you mix a little formula in. You don't have to buy anything prepared. That box of crappy dry stuff is just as good as it always was, and mix up. The first time you mix it up, you mix up enough that you're like, why am I bothering to dirty this bowl? Because after 10 minutes, you're going to put it in their mouth. They'll tongue it out, you scrape it off their chin, put it back in their mouth. After 10 minutes, you're bored, they're bored, we're over it. So don't waste your time and your money with a bunch more. But once they get to eating pretty good, then you can mix up a little more, Okay, does that make sense? Feeding a baby is fun, she's right. Oh, God, I want more grandkids. Okay, so, but understand the highlights of anticipatory guidance. It's fun to talk with the 3-year-olds about what they're doing and hear what's going on with them. It's fun. She talks about the person, drawing the person. I always ask the kid, because you want to acknowledge, even though the MAs do all this stuff for the well-child exams and do all this stuff, you want to acknowledge that you want to acknowledge to the parent that you know what it is. So I look at that picture, I said, who'd you draw a picture of? And I write who it is. Dr. Johnson, on the inside, underneath everything, at whatever age, she'll ask them what they want to be when they grow up, and writes it on the inside of the chart. That's just fun. And they're, when you're seeing them for their 17-year visit, and I'm like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are you thinking about doing? What do you think about doing after high school? Don't assume every kid's going to go to college. Don't do that to them. What are you thinking about doing after high school? I want to take a gap year. I want to go. That's fine. Oh, I'm going right to OU, I want to major in biology, I want to go to medical school, and I flip back, I go, oh, that's what you said at 7 years old, too. So that's kind of fun. That stuff is kind of fun.
I've always wanted to be a pony, so.
You always wanted to be a pony?
No, you're at 4 you wanted to be a pony, so.
Yeah, right, yeah. So. I know, so, anyway, just think about anticipatory guidance, okay?